Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons for another Earthworks podcast, and I'm very excited to have Clint Steele from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, or University of Maryland, Baltimore County is UMBC, which most of us know. And I'm really excited because, and Clint knows this, I was there, I think, when you had three buildings. My sister went to UMBC in the very early 70s, so I'm aging myself. I was very young at the time, of course. But man, back in the day, UMBC was a tiny little, it wasn't anything but I guess a branch campus of the University of Maryland, right? When they started.
Yeah, it started as basically a commuter school
Yeah.
for people living in the county.
It was, there was, I think when I remember going, I mean, I tagged along. I was the bratty little brother, and it was really cool that my sister was getting out of the house, and she had her own little dorm room, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Can I come and stay and live here with you? And I spent a couple weekends being the bratty little brother, hanging out with her, and she of course made me do all sorts of chores and tasks, but it was interesting. I mean, I went to a very similar branch campus at Penn State. I went to Berks campus of Penn State, which reminded me very much of what UMBC looked like back in that day. When I went there in the mid 70s, there was three buildings, and one of them was brand new. And now the same thing is true of that particular branch campus of Penn State. It's massive, and there's tons and tons of buildings. How many? I don't know if I'm going to ask you this by surprise, but how many buildings are on UMBC's campus now? Do you know?
Ooh, I don't even. Yeah, there are a bunch and continue to go up.
Which is kind of definition of enough that kind of tells you that man, these little schools have become big schools and all that. So you've been at UMBC since 2015. You are the sports turf manager. How many fields are you managing there?
So I have a total of 9 fields. 8 are natural grass, 1 synthetic.
Okay, so you've got mostly natural gas, which is let's get into you a little bit more. You and I were talking before we went live here. You're from Northern Virginia. You went to Virginia Tech. You went to work at a sports fields renovation company, and then you worked with our friend Josh McPherson at George Mason. Did I miss anything? I just gave you your whole resume, but I shouldn't.
No. I dabbled in some golf course work before that, but yeah, other than that.
Oh, so I didn't know that you do have golf course work.
I did.
Before you went to Virginia Tech?
Yeah. Before I went to school, knew I wanted to do a turf track. So yeah, I just went to the local golf course, which was or is now Trump National. But it was Lowe's Island Club when I was working there. So
you did tell me that when we had dinner a couple of weeks ago, and now I remember you telling me that. My memory doesn't serve me well some days. So you're in high school when you were there, or were you in college?
Just out of high school, just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do because all my friends went to school at Virginia Tech, so just wanted to figure out if I really wanted to go to school to do this, and eventually decided on doing that.
And you ended up with a 4-year degree at Virginia Tech?
2-year degree.
Okay. Yeah. So you come out of high school, you're a typical kid. You don't know what the hell you want to do in life. You find a job at the local golf course and you go and work there. Is that what happened? It bit you right there and then?
No, actually, the turf bug bit me in high school playing baseball.
An athlete, yeah.
Yes. And, like as most baseball players in high school learn, taking care of the field is, part of what you do, at post practice, post games. So I just fell in love with it. And also during that time, my senior year, I had a free period. So I was the athletic director's helper, I guess you could say.
Gopher.
And he had sports turf magazines in his office. And it just blew me away that you could do this as a career.
Oh, so that's a great story.
Yeah, so that's where the bug kind of bit me.
So you weren't a left-handed relief pitcher that could make it through the majors until you were 40, and
I was not. I quickly realized that was not going to be a path for me.
Yeah, I think most athletes, if they're smart, they'll quickly realize that as well. Yep. So you're reading sports turf magazines and doing a little helping out on the sports field, and the bug came and just decided to take you away, huh?
Yep, it did.
Anything in particular? I mean, was there one thing, or was it just the whole, being out there, being outside, getting the fresh air and all that kind of stuff?
It was just the fact, like after you drag a baseball infield and like stripe it up, it's just like looking back and you get that immediate gratification of like, I did that,
Yeah.
like I did this to help make this field look the best that it could at that moment in
That's
time.
that's probably, I get this conversation a lot, or have this conversation a lot with a lot of guys, and that's probably one of the biggest things that, you do all this work, you work like a dog all day long, but when you're done, you look back, especially in sports surf because it's a smaller unit. But when you're done, you look back and say, I did that, and look how cool that looks.
Yep.
And then of course
Yep.
you have to come back tomorrow and do it all over again.
Correct.
So
Correct.
it just never seems to want to end. But
Yep.
so now you're kind of post high school, and you're deciding that this is what you want to do, and you start hunting around and realize that Virginia Tech has a nice little 2-year turf program.
They did. Yeah. So actually, I moved down there just, being 20 years old, to hang out with my friends. And one of my friends' girlfriends told me about a job at the stadium shop down there, and kind of interviewed with the head groundskeeper down there, Casey Underwood. And he was like, yeah, like I'll take you in August when football season's rolling. So yeah, I moved down there and spent a year working, and then went to school the following year.
So you go down to Virginia Tech to party with your friends, and then still deciding
Yep.
what you're going to do with your life, and you find a job on the at the stadium on campus.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Did they
Yeah.
pay your way through school, I hope?
They did not.
No, I didn't think they would. That's all right.
Yep.
So you were at Virginia Tech for a year before you even started classes.
Yes.
When you
Yeah.
went down there, did you know there was a 2-year golf turf program?
I didn't know they had 2 year. I knew they had the 4 year program. And then finding out that they had the 2 year option, I spent that year kind of talking it over with Casey and some other people that had gone through the 2 year program. And also, I can't remember if Dr. Goatley was there or not.
I would think you would be, right? When you were there, what, in early,
I started
2010?
school in 2002.
Oh, is that
Um,
early? Okay.
yeah. So, but yeah, just kind of figuring out, like financially, should I commit to the 4 year program, or is it better
Right.
to get that experience, 2 years ahead of some other people? So yeah, just yeah, ended up deciding on the 2 year program and never looked back.
Was it hard?
It was, for me, it wasn't, because I loved it,
Yeah.
like the math classes, and thankfully it was like agricultural math, so it wasn't that hard. But
It wasn't calculus too or anything like that.
right, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I loved every minute of it. You go to class for a few hours, go to the
Right.
stadium and work for a few hours, and go back to class. And yeah, I just enjoyed it.
So you were working through the 2 years you were in school then. So
Yeah.
you stayed at that stadium.
Oh yeah. Oh
Now,
yeah. It
had
was
you
nonstop.
at that point, did you have any aspiration to get into golf, or were you bit by the sports turf bug?
I was bit by the sports bug. My first year there, before I went to started school, it was a Thursday night game against Maryland. And my first time experience a stadium like that. And we went in to get dressed for the game and walked out. And it's 60,000 people just ready to go on a Thursday night, and I was
Yeah.
like, this is it. Like, this is for me.
Were they were cheering for you, I assume.
Oh
They
yeah. Oh
saw you
yeah.
walking out there, and they
Yeah.
stood up and gave you the big wave and everything.
Oh
Hey
yeah.
man, there's the sports turf guy, man. Let's wave for him. How many people were on the crew at the time?
Oh, let me see. They had, I think, 4 full-timers, and then about 5 or 6 students at that time.
Yeah. So you finished 2 years. Let me ask you this. This is the most important question, of course. How was your soils class?
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Who was it? Do you remember?
Um, I think it was Sam Doak.
Sam Doak of the Doak family? Probably no relationship, I'm sure. Of
Maybe not.
yeah, the architect. Did they teach you basic NP and K pH stuff, or did you really kind
Oh
of
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Soil
that's
structure, all
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, when I got to Rutgers, there was 3 classes. There was a Soils 1, Soils 2, and a Soil Fertility, and they were all fairly high baccalaureate level stuff. So I was fortunate enough to be given enough leeway to say, look, let's make this stuff that's really practical. Let's teach these guys how to read a soil test and be able to take this stuff out there. And I think a lot of these 2-year schools did a pretty good job of that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's designed to help, you guys go out into the industry and really be good. And I don't know Virginia Tech's program very well, but when you were there, was it a lot of professors or was there a lot of commercial people? Was there a mix?
It was professors.
Okay.
Um, we had Dr. Dennis Duncan at the time.
Oh,
Yeah, he did a lot of stuff, or I think he got a lot of his degrees from Michigan State.
yeah.
Um, did a lot with us, so yeah, he was pretty influential. Sam Doak. Yeah, but I know they've gone through a lot of transition and since I've been through there.
All the programs have. I mean, they've come and gone, and people have come and gone. But and it's funny because we were talking about this in our office meeting this morning. These 2-year programs are essential in our industry. I mean, and we're dying for people. We need more and more people, and a lot of these programs have lost a lot of steam. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So you spent 2 years at Virginia Tech. And then from there, you get out of that. They obviously didn't take you, or you didn't stay at the stadium. I assume you got placed somewhere out of school.
Yeah. My last semester, actually had met Mike Sollenberger, who was at George Mason at the time. And then he was kind of starting his own business on the side at that point and wanted me to come work for him there. So that's what I did.
Doing
Um,
construction of sports fields.
yeah, really. At that time, he was putting in a lot of Patriot Bermuda grass fields
Oh,
and
really? That was hot
around
back
Northern
then. Yeah,
Virginia. Yeah, that
I
was the
remember
sexy
those
new
days.
Bermuda grass.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Patriot was the hot thing for a couple of years.
Yep.
Did you do any cool sites? I mean, what kind of places did you build? Schools or anything
Yeah,
notable?
he was in hot and heavy with Fairfax County Public Schools, so he did a lot of conversions for their high schools. Um, but we did do a little bit of work with the Washington Nationals when they had just moved to DC.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah, and Jimmy Rogers was their first head
Yeah,
groundskeeper.
I remember that.
Yeah, so Jimmy and Mike had a relationship
I remember that
from
too.
George Mason
Actually,
before.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. That's a
and
small world.
he was also in with the DC United pretty heavily too. So we maintained their practice facility outside of RFK Stadium.
Were both those fields Patriot?
No, RFK Stadium was not, I don't believe.
So he was just
Uh,
maintaining that. He didn't establish that.
well, we would come in and help Jimmy out with whatever he needed at that point, because being so new and figuring out DC government and all that
Right,
stuff,
right.
he didn't have all the logistics worked out yet.
So you're fairly young at this point, and you're doing work at a major baseball stadium. That's actually
Yeah,
very cool, right? So
yeah, oh
you
yeah.
got to see that. Did you get there? Were you able to go to any of the games while they were? Did you ever work a game there with them?
No, we just saw the one game, or the one game that we had to do some work at late at night. We got to watch the game that night and then go in immediately after and start doing whatever we needed to
Tearing
do.
everything up and making it ugly for the
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
break that they had for a week and a half.
right.
I went. I've only been to that stadium once, but I went to. I think it was Randy Johnson's. I don't know, 200th win or some big statement, and we were all excited because he was going to win. There was no question. I mean, he was up against I don't
Right.
even know who, but they were up against somebody, and it was going to be a slam dunk for his this victorious number, and of course we're there, and it's raining, and it's like, oh man. So we sit there for a while, and then they cancel the bloody game, and he comes back the next day. I wasn't there. He wins the game,
Right.
gets his 200th win. I think it was 200th win, but interesting stadium. So what were some of the other things you got to that you were doing for renovation? You were getting to do a little bit of everything then when you were working with them, putting in fields.
Oh yeah.
It had to
Yep.
be a great experience. I mean, that's just got to
It
be
was. It
phenomenal.
was.
How many
You know,
years were you there?
just one, and then I went to George Mason after that.
What
But
kind of
yeah,
stuff? I mean, what would you say you took away from doing all that renovation work? What was the biggest lessons?
at that point, that was my first kind of experience growing Bermuda grass. because like being in Northern Virginia, it wasn't that big of a thing back then.
What year are we talking about?
So this is 2004.
Okay, yeah,
So,
no, it wasn't very big back then. Actually, they
yeah,
were a lot of places were going, rye and even bent grass on the golf courses. So yeah,
yeah. So Mike had just started putting it. Well, I think some, especially sports fields, had Vaymont or
yeah,
some tip sport scattered around. But yeah, like Patriot was the first one that kind of started the whole revolution of moving Bermuda grass into the north,
yeah.
and especially in the Mid Atlantic in the transition zone. So yeah, so just kind of learning how one to sprig a field, and like you look at a sprigged field and you're like, this is never going to make it,
Right. It's really weird looking,
and
isn't it?
right, and then once you start turning the water back and putting the fertilizer to it, it just takes off, and it's amazing to witness that
Yeah.
from a daily to weekly basis.
Yeah, I remember vividly, one of my first experiences seeing them. Like, it looks like they're just throwing, weeds on the field.
Right.
What
Right.
the heck is this all about? And then you come back a couple of weeks later and it's like boom, it's like all of a sudden popping. But yeah, I mean the whole sprigging process for the first time you ever see it, it's it's quite entertaining. And like you said, it's like there's no way this can work. But
Yeah.
you got to see that and you got to go through that whole experience. That's great. And now, of course, in your area, in that Baltimore region, I don't know if you know this, but I guess it's who is it? The USDA that sets the zones. The map has risen, so you guys are now more like Northern Virginia and Baltimore. Philadelphia is more like Baltimore was a couple of years ago, and the temperatures are getting more and more. But now you're starting to see more and more Bermuda grass. Do you have any Bermuda at UMBC?
I do. All of our varsity fields are Bermuda grass.
Okay, I figured you would. Yeah, I
So
should have known that.
yeah, so soccer and softball are Latitude, and our baseball field is Tahoma.
Okay, so you kind of how long ago did they convert to Bermuda? They probably before your time, I'm guessing. And
No, no, actually, I was the one to do it for them. Well, soccer was Bermuda. It was Riviera when I
okay,
got there. Yeah, so we converted. Well, after 2018, I believe it was, we had tremendous winter kill on our soccer field.
Mm.
So we converted it to Latitude, and in the process, we're like, well, let's just do softball since it's so small, anyways. So we did those two in 18 and converted baseball in 19.
And you sprigged it.
Yep.
Yeah, so you
Well,
did. You
we
went through that
sodded the
process.
infield and sprigged the outfield because we
Yeah.
had camps and stuff to get ready for.
Let me come back to that. So you leave the renovation company and you go over to George Mason and work with Josh McPherson, and you're on a crew. Is that the position that you were taking?
Yep.
How big a how I don't remember George Mason anymore because my brain is starting to slow down. But how many fields were they over there when you were there?
Ooh, so we had soccer, softball, baseball, two practice fields.
Was there football?
No, no football. Oh,
No.
well, it was a club team. So yeah, we had about I think 7 or 8 natural grass fields and 2 synthetic fields at that point.
And Josh was the turf manager at that point.
He was, yep.
Okay, yeah. How was that working with Josh? I mean, I knew Josh when he was first there. He started to work a little bit with us on at Earthworks. Was starting to really get excited about managing soils, as we would see it. What was that experience like? Tell me what it was like going to work for him. So now you got a new manager, somebody bringing some new ideas to you, and it's probably a little new because he was pretty innovative, as I remember back in those days.
Oh yeah, yeah. I loved working for Josh because I knew Josh. He was the graduate assistant at Virginia Tech when I was a
Right,
student
that's right.
there.
I remember
So
that.
yes, yeah. So when he came to George Mason, it was just kind of a natural progression to move on to work with him. Yeah, and I learned a lot from Josh. He brought a lot of the science and data driven aspects of turf management to the
Yeah.
job, and learned a lot doing it that way.
Yeah, I recall him being quite analytical in those days. I remember him when he was at Virginia Tech, now that you say that. But so give me some idea. I mean, things that you took with you to your next job from George Mason? What's some of the better,
Oh,
little tricks that you learned while you were there?
just kind of perfecting growing Bermuda grass was one.
Was it all Bermuda?
Uh, they had a lot of Bermuda at that point. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
you
they
were
had.
were they doing any construction?
They built a new softball field when I was there. We hosted a professional softball team for a couple of years.
Oh, that's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah, and they were the impetus, I guess, for renovating that stadium or that field. It wasn't really stadium,
How long were you
but
at George Mason?
I was there for 4 years.
And then
Yeah,
UMBC opened up and you went over there?
I did.
So for those
Well,
of
actually, no. In between, I worked for Capital Sports Fields with Nick Gamble for 5 years in between.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't back to
Yep.
renovation? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Renovation, maintenance. Yep.
So you got back into that. I mean, obviously you had that kind of in your blood from working there right out of school, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And
Like
what
that was all because of a move, moving to Baltimore because my wife is from Baltimore. So we moved here and yeah, so I had to
so
take a job.
so the wife moves you up to Baltimore, and this is new to you because you're from Northern Virginia. And for those who don't know, I mean, University of Maryland, Baltimore County is in Baltimore County, Maryland, which is just north of Baltimore City. So, from Northern Virginia, you're really only a couple hours from where you were. Even from George Mason, you were probably only a couple of hours to
Yeah, maybe
north
an
of
hour and a
Baltimore.
half
Yeah,
tops. Well, with
yeah.
traffic, it could be a couple.
Nowadays, it might be 3 hours, depending on the
Yeah,
time of day that you
right.
go up 95 and through the city. So you were doing more renovation. What was hot when you went to the second run of renovations? Was Patriot still hot back when you came back to doing field construction?
It was. Some others had come on. I think Tip Top had just started to come
Oh,
out.
really?
Yeah.
One of my favorite, actually.
Yeah. And kind of a lesser known T10. I don't know if a whole lot of people use that.
Never even heard of
Um,
it.
yeah,
That's pretty
but
funny. Did you use any Tiftoff at that time or no?
we put in we put it in, I think at one of the private high schools in DC.
Yeah, I work around a lot of soccer fields across the country that use that, and they love it. The color is great, the density is great. It really works well. I remember, I don't know who, if it was Dr. Henry from Georgia or somebody was talking to me about the naming of that product, and I think they spent like $60,000 with a marketing company to come up with the name Tiff Tough. And everybody
Right.
thought it was the stupidest name going. It's a great grass, might be a silly name, but people recognize it, and a lot of soccer fields have been built with Tiff Tough. And like I said, I've worked around it a number of times, and I think it's a great grass. But it was funny because, like you said, the Patriot thing was really the first exposure the most of us had in Bermuda grass. I don't even know if it's being planted anymore. Is it? Do you know?
I don't think so. I don't even know if at least any farms in our area carry it anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's kind of come and gone. So what kind of things did you learn at the second wave of construction? Any cool projects that you worked on or anything memorable?
not not really, because at that company our bread and butter was synthetic field maintenance.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of warranty work for AstroTurf and Field Turf.
Okay. Let's
So
not talk
yeah,
about that then.
right, right.
Let's just stay with grass, with real grass. So you go to
Yeah.
University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is in what town? What town is that in? I don't even know.
It's technically Catonsville,
It is
Maryland.
Catonsville. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
it's
again north of Baltimore a bit.
well,
Or
actually, we're southeast of the city.
Oh, your UMBC is southeast of the city.
Yeah.
Baltimore County is
Yep.
north. Okay. But yeah, so you're a suburb of Baltimore, and you're now the sports turf manager at UMBC. And that was, you said 2015 that you took that job.
Correct.
What kind of shape was it in when you got there?
Not very good. Baseball and softball were a hodgepodge of cool season grasses and weeds. Um, the soccer field was pretty good. Like I said, it was Riviera. They had a contractor that maintained it. So it was pretty good for that time. They had hosted U.S. national team had come through there a couple times, some Premier League teams. So they did a pretty good job with that field.
So if you recall back in 2015, and now I'm asking you to stretch about 10 years, what was the interview process like? What were they looking for? Why, what did they, what was the direction that they were asking you to take when you came in as the sports field manager?
I don't know that they really had a particular person or direction that they wanted to go in mind at that point in time. I think they were just kind of filling a void. Um,
Who interviewed you? What was the who was the who is your boss, or what's their
well,
position? I don't need a
my
name, but
boss, my boss, then up to last year, his name was Tom Mandato, and he was the associate athletic director for facilities at
okay.
that point. So yeah, so the interview was with him, and there was a part with some of the coaches that I would be working with.
Oh, the
Um,
coaches were part of the interview process.
yeah,
Do you remember
so
any of the conversations that they brought to the table when you were interviewing them? And you know,
just a couple, they just wanted to know why I wanted the job, and
okay.
I was like, I feel like you guys are in a prime position to start doing good things because I think at that point they'd won some conference championships for lacrosse um and things like that. And soccer, the year before, soccer had just made the Final Four. Um,
Oh, really?
so yeah, so they were doing pretty well.
Yeah,
So
we talked about this earlier, but I think a lot of people might recognize the name from your basketball team who made it. How far did they make to the 16?
no, they made it to
Did eight?
they made they won their first round game, um, making history by we were the first ever 16 seed to beat a number one seed.
Oh, is that
So then
right? That's the
yeah,
history. Okay. Who'd you beat?
yep,
Do you remember? I don't remember.
UVA,
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah,
I do remember that now that you say that.
yeah. So yeah, that was a big deal.
I had no
But
idea you were the first 16 to beat a one. That's very funny. And
yeah,
I think it's happened since then, hasn't it?
it has.
Didn't
I think
Princeton do
multiple
it
times.
oh yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
pretty funny. Yeah. I mean, obviously I had UMBC in my heart from my sister, but yeah, that was earth shattering back in that time when you
it
guys
was.
won
It was
that game.
huge,
Yeah. Yeah.
huge.
So I think, a lot of people that might not have ever heard of UMBC, all of a sudden you're all over the press. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you didn't make the second game though, did you?
No, I think from that night the guys were just so wore out, because it was a lot. They had to do a lot of press afterwards, and I think they were just spent. By the time they got to that next game,
Yeah,
and
that's too bad.
gave it all they could, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah, that's too bad. So,
Yeah,
so you guys, I mean, you guys are big in lacrosse, and you're big in soccer, right?
yeah.
And the school does well. I mean, I remember, even back in the 70s, lacrosse was pretty big for UMBC. My brother-in-law played lacrosse for UMBC back in those days. That was a memory. I used to go to some of those games, and I didn't know anything about turf, but I don't remember being overly impressed by their fields. And
Right.
I think there was a lot of dead grass. I kind of remember that. I was, growing up in Baltimore as I did. I think it's a law, or at least it used to be a law that you had to play lacrosse as one of your sports because
I think so. I
yeah,
think as soon as you're born, they give you a
yeah,
lacrosse
you're
stick.
born with a stick in your hand and a hard
Yeah,
ball, and you got to, they throw it against your head to make sure you're strong enough to survive. But yeah,
yeah,
and it's a great sport to play, and it's a great sport to watch.
yeah.
But it's funny. I moved from Baltimore to Philadelphia. This is now I'm aging myself, but it was in the mid '70s, and they didn't have boys lacrosse. They had girls lacrosse. And there was a whole bunch of us that wanted to play lacrosse and wanted to start a team, and they wouldn't let us. And the AD
Oh
said
wow.
no. And we finally fought and fought and fought to a point where, we had to fight for for a team. And they finally gave us the girls' old lacrosse sticks that, were radically different in shape and size and value. So, I guess we all begged mom and dad to go out and buy sticks. Some of us had played before, so I had a decent stick and all that stuff. But we ended up playing either other team, clubs from other schools locally, other public schools, and they were all basically football players that said, "Hey, what a great sport! You can run around and beat people over the head with a stick." And that's exactly what they did. And I remember a couple broken ribs and a lot of bangs on the back and the shoulders. And and if it wasn't playing one of those schools, we would play some of the local prep schools. And of course, they played lacrosse at the prep schools. And, they were going off to the Ivy Leagues, where lacrosse was big for a long, long time. And
Yep.
and playing, a little club like ours, playing a prep school. I mean, it was just a joke for these guys. I mean, I remember one game. I think one game was 21-1, and the only reason we scored one was because they were laughing so hard that they just, kind of sat down. But a great sport. And Maryland, where you are, I mean, it's the heart of, John Hopkins, the heart of all of, of that sport. I just found out the other day on some trivia game that lacrosse is the national sport of Canada. I think that's right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I might be a little bit wrong, but I didn't realize that he was. I mean, I assumed curling was, and that's what everybody said on this
Right.
trivia thing, and we were all wrong. It was lacrosse. So tell me about what's going on. What is it like? I mean, how many coaches do you have to work with? Tell me what the day to day is for you as the sports turf manager at a Division I school. Now, and before I ask that, UMBC, how closely affiliated are they with the University of Maryland? Are you completely? I mean, obviously you're affiliated, but I mean, are you a satellite? Are you a branch? What is it technically?
I guess you could kind of call us a sister school. We're in the same system, the University System of Maryland, but we're totally independent of them aside from that.
Okay, so you're not tied. You're not tied to the university at College Park in any way. You're separate from there. You're not. The AD department isn't over you. You have your whole.
No,
Everything that you're doing is all by yourself. So
correct.
tell me, what's it like? I mean, your UMBC, you got a bunch of fields, you got a bunch of coaches, you're Division I school, what's day to day like for you?
Well, I mean, for me, it's pretty busy because I don't have a staff. It's just me.
I remember you
So
telling me that the other night at dinner. I'm like, really? That's
yeah,
unheard
yeah.
of.
So I may get help from our event manager or our assistant AD for facilities. They may help me mow and do some other small tasks, but the bulk of the work is just on me. So,
So
um,
you don't have anybody, you don't have any part-time people, you don't have anybody. So you're mowing, you're you're
no,
you're doing you're fertilizing, you're managing, you're taking all the heat.
yep.
Is that always how it's been? You've always been alone?
No, I had an assistant when I first started. He was 60 years old and nearing retirement. So I had him for a year or two, and then he ended up retiring. And then it was a year before I could hire another assistant. And then I had him for almost 2 years, and he moved on to Florida Gulf Coast University. Um, and then yeah, just budget cuts and COVID and all that. Just haven't hired anybody back yet.
Do you have it in the budget? I mean, is it an economic thing, or is it just really a time management thing right now?
At this point, I don't really know where we stand with it. It could be budgetary,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of voids in the department to fill, and like just in this whole media-driven age of sports and NIL and all that, they're just trying to figure out where they need to fill gaps. So
Yeah. So so I assume you're probably not dealing with a large budget either. And I'm not trying to get into the
no,
dollars of it, but just the generalization.
yeah, like we're so since we're not the University of Maryland in College Park, we don't have a large history. We were founded in 1966, so
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of old money, I guess you could say, in alumni
Yeah.
and stuff like
Donors
that.
coming in, dropping big bags.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
unfortunately, my
So yeah, we're
sister won't
just
be able to help you on that. She's on a fixed income now, and it's not helping. So,
yeah. So
um,
yeah, we're just trying to find our way.
yeah.
Trying to find corporate partners and all that,
So,
as
how do you
most
do
people
this? I
are.
mean, talk to me as if you're giving advice to somebody that's listening in. How does I mean, and you said this before, but how many fields you got? 9 fields. Well, one plastic
Yep,
and eight grass.
yep, yep.
How on earth does one guy manage all of that by himself?
Well, so like the 8 natural grass fields, those are varying levels of maintenance. Like one is like our rugby field that I barely see every other week. We just have a contractor mow it.
So you do have
Every other
contractor help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that helps.
so yeah, so they mow that field and then I'll fertilize it, sparingly throughout the year.
And that's Bermuda?
No, it is mainly cool season and weeds. We have some large patches of Bermuda that we filled in some rough areas with.
So it's a
But
hodgepodge. The rugby field is a
yeah,
hodgepodge. But they
yeah,
must beat the daylights out of it when they're actually playing on it, right?
they do because they start playing this time of year, practicing,
They're playing in
and
February?
oh yeah, they started practicing in late January.
Wow.
And they play through the rain, snow, whatever.
Well, they're
So
rugby
yeah,
players. They should be able to
they
do
are.
anything, right? Yeah, they just
Yeah.
yeah. What and probably
So
prefer playing on a mud field as opposed to a grass field, I would guess, right?
yeah.
Just beating the
So yeah,
daylights
so
out.
you have that field that doesn't get as much maintenance, but so like this time of year, my focus is on baseball and softball.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of help from the baseball team. Those guys, like I said, growing up playing baseball, taking care of the field is just part of the deal. So most of them are used to that.
Do you have to manage them? I
And then,
mean, are they
sorry,
consistent? Are they able, or are they there on a regular basis, or is it like hit and miss and whenever they feel like coming, or is there schedules for these
they,
guys to come and help you?
yeah, they do it post practice and post games. A lot of times I'll have to remind them, like mound maintenance, like you have to use your water and, like
Right.
kind of give them refresher courses on dirt maintenance and stuff like that. And, like keep the drag away from the grass edge, stuff like that. So, but they do a pretty decent job for me. And then,
And they're
that,
consistent
that
though. They're there on a
they
regular
are.
basis when you're there.
Yep.
Okay, so you have help.
Yep. Yep. And their assistant coach, he came from a Power Five. He played baseball at South Carolina, so he knows what a really good field looks like. So he's on them all the time to watch the details basically.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah,
are they more interested in working the skin and the mound, or are they actually helping out with grass?
it's mainly the dirt work
Yeah.
with the mound and the skin.
Yeah. So they're running
Yeah.
backs of clay and just dragging stuff around all the time.
Yep.
That's too
Yeah.
funny.
So that gives me time to focus on softball, because a lot of the girls don't grow up doing that stuff. So, but they will if they have to, because their coach, is kind of the same. He likes his field to look good. So,
Wow. And the coach doesn't go to the school and say, "Hey, this guy should probably get a couple assistants so we can keep our
he
kids
he
on."
does, he
Yeah.
does.
That's got to be interesting. I mean, you had said that to me when we met a couple weeks ago, and I just still didn't believe it that you were the only one on this property. But now, now you're telling me, you got some help, but that's a lot of stuff, man. You must be juggling a lot of elephants on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, it gets busy this time of year when you have a lacrosse game on
Yeah.
a Saturday and softball doubleheader and then baseball's going to play that night and soccer may have an out of season game. Yeah, it gets to be a lot sometimes, but like I said, like you got to love it, you know. I heard a quote one time, or maybe it's in a magazine that I was reading. It was a golf course magazine, and this one superintendent said, and he was giving this advice to young turf managers. He's like, if you get involved with a young lady, you need to tell her up front you're always going to have a mistress, and that mistress is going to be green, and you're always going to be thinking about her. And I was like, man, like that's it, like
And you're still
like
married? Is that what
even
you're
when I'm
trying to
all,
tell me something? It's worked for you?
I am married, but yeah, I am married, but thankfully I have a loving wife that understands my passion for it. Sometimes she understands more than others, but
Yeah, I bet.
um, yeah,
God bless her. What
yeah.
are you at every game? Do you have to be at the Saturday games, or you can just?
No, usually it's just the softball games for because usually they're having double headers, so to turn the field over in between games and all of that stuff.
So when the crew comes out to run the mats, you're the only guy. You're running. You're pulling
Yeah,
the only mat.
I'm raking, I'm dragging, I'm
So
trying to
when
reline the field.
we watch the Orioles and they got 15 guys out there, you're the only guy running around pulling that mat.
Yes.
That's got to be
Yes.
pretty that's got to be pretty funny to watch. But man, that's got to be a challenge. I mean, what's the hardest part about being the only guy on the property? I mean, what's the juggle like?
Um, for me, the hardest part is just, like having that passion and not being able to do what you want to do, like in having to sacrifice sometimes the quality of your work, basically. Sometimes you got to choose quantity over quality. And sometimes things suffer, which I hate, but it's just
Yeah.
the nature of where I'm at right now. So
Does that get you into trouble with anybody when you had to make that decision and they see that, this area isn't quite as good as that area? Or does one coach look at one field over, another field and say, well, why don't we look as good as that? I mean, what's the politic like?
um being coaches, they're always like that.
Right.
But they understand with where I'm at, because they all go to our administration and try to get me more help and try to figure out ways to get more help. But um yeah, it's just they just know when they're out of season, their field isn't going to get as much help as when they're in season.
Right, right. That's too funny. Yeah, that's got to be a challenge, man. Like I said, when I heard you tell me that, I thought I've got to get you on the podcast because I'm not sure I know anybody at a facility the size of yours that's literally all by themselves, which is just
Yep.
amazing. So what's what's the biggest drawback of that? I mean, what's the biggest headache that you have to deal with?
Probably just time and the hours,
Yeah.
hours away from my family.
How many
Um,
hours a week do you work, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, I'm sure it's seasonal, but what's the,
yeah,
how
this
is the
time of year it could be 60 plus.
wow.
Um, yeah, just depending upon what we have going on that week.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you also have to manage things like graduation and other events other than sports, or are you just doing sports?
No, we have an arena where they have graduations and things like that in there now.
What about campus? Do you have to do anything on the campus? Are you doing any landscaping? And what do they do there? Hire that all out?
Yeah, I'm strictly athletics. I work for the athletic department, so
Okay.
yeah, our campus grounds, they do their own thing and manage their own contractors.
So of the 8 grass fields, is there one baby that you have that you really, baby and really, you said baseball or softball, but is that the premier field in your mind?
Um,
And
I mean,
maybe
I
you don't
would
want to
say
answer that because you might piss somebody off. I'm not sure.
I would just say from the um maintenance requirements, baseball and softball get the bulk of my time. But like I said before, with baseball players knowing what to do and taking ownership of their field a lot, then softball by default gets a lot more of my attention.
Right, right. Well, of the baseball, softball, how much of that is actually grass, or how much of it is? What's the split between grass and dirt and skin?
Um, Softball is probably about half and half.
Really, that much?
Yeah, yeah, maybe a little more towards the dirt side, I
Yeah,
guess. Um, in baseball, we have grass base paths, so that takes a lot of headaches away for me,
yeah.
maintenance wise. But yeah, I think we have about 95,000 square feet of grass for baseball.
How many square feet do you have total in sports?
Oh, ooh, I'd have to look it up. I
Take
think
a
we're
guess.
around like I'm about like 500,000 square feet
So
ish.
one guy managing 500,000 square feet.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's just unbelievable. That's
yeah.
just amazing. I hope you get a huge salary every week because of that. You get
Probably
5
not what I.
assistant salary. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you're not.
Yeah.
Are you able to, I mean, are they giving you enough money to, get enough, tools and equipment and fertilizer and all that kind of stuff? I mean, is that
Yeah, it's getting better and better each
good?
year. Yeah.
So
So yeah.
let's talk agronomy a little bit. Obviously, you're on this because you've known us for a while. So you're
Hmm.
doing a little bit of soil work. You're also doing some other cool stuff, but is everything managed the same way? Are you soil testing? You're looking at soils. I mean, what have you learned from a agronomic standpoint? I know you learned a lot from Josh down at George Mason, but what's the philosophy agronomically for you in a place like this?
For me, it's like it's starting with the soil, feeding the soil instead of the plant.
Thank
Um,
you. I've heard that somewhere. I don't know where.
yeah. And it's just trying to reduce inputs, being one guy, I
Yeah.
can't be on a sprayer, which, I don't have, but I can't be on a sprayer or in a tractor fertilizing all the time. So, any way I can reduce inputs but still get that quality that, I'm looking for at the Division 1 level, I try to do. And um watching gosh, I can't even think of it now. What's that movie that we've talked about before with Woody Harrelson?
Kiss the ground.
Yes,
Yeah.
watching that movie just blew my mind.
Yeah. Regenerative
About
agriculture. Yeah.
yes, and the carbon sequestration
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of that. It just totally like clicked in my mind with the whole biological soil management.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting because you got all that ground and you're one guy. So what better way to do it than to find ways to reduce a lot of your input? So I mean, you just let the soil do all the work for you instead of, beating
yeah,
it up all the time. You don't have a sprayer? You don't
no,
you can't spray
no.
anything?
Well, I mean, we just contract it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
But if you see something coming up real short live that you can't, so if you needed to get out there, let's say for sake of argument with a fungicide because things are starting to die out, how long would it take you to get these guys in there and to spray something like it? Can you
probably
do
about a week or so if it's during the height of the season, growing season.
it? So in a huge breakout, I mean, you're losing grass and something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're dancing. Do you lose
yeah.
much grass? I mean, you must have a lot of physical pressure. You gotta
I
have a lot of people on these fields.
yeah, I haven't lost very much. Like I
And I
said
don't say that to
before,
be derogatory. I say that only because it's such an overwhelming, situation that you're in. So, but yeah,
yeah, I mean, having Bermuda grass thankfully
yeah,
has helped out a lot, like with uniformity and a lot of aesthetics too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it just, helps me out a lot. But yeah, after 2018 when we had a lot of winter kill, that was the most that I've ever lost in one season.
That must have been pretty frustrating. I mean,
A
coming
little
in
bit.
and were you under snow a lot that winter?
No, we were not.
It was just all cold and freezing and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff.
And that winter, coming out of that winter, it preceded that year we had like the most rain we've ever had in one
Yeah.
season. So yeah, it was a tough year.
How long did that last? The whole season?
Uh yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it rained through the spring, summer, and fall.
I remember that year. It was horrible. What was what?
Yeah.
So how did you get out of it? I mean, what kind of tricks did you do to push through all that? Did you fertilize some more?
Not really more. A lot of poking holes, trying to poke more
Mm,
holes to get that water to move through.
yeah.
Because we're all native soil, so
What's your
we
soil
didn't
like? How do you describe your soil?
nasty.
That's one word. I'll take
Yeah.
that.
Um,
I'm going to steal that for my next academy. That's a
yeah,
good
like
one.
sometimes I'm just amazed that we can grow grass in it.
Yeah.
Um, like if you go to dig up an irrigation head and sometimes you're pulling up, this white, mucky, native soil clay
Oof.
that's in our area and it's just
Baltimore gumbo, right?
yeah, yeah, it's
Your soils are high magnesium, aren't they? Aren't they high mag, low calcium? I mean,
I think
there's
they
a belt
are,
that
yeah.
goes through there that tends to be, and it gets really sticky and it dries out. It's really hard.
Yep.
You breaking tines when you're aerifying at all?
I haven't yet.
Good.
If we have
Let's
it, it
hope
may
you
be
never do.
yeah, it may be because of a rock that pops up, but
Right,
yeah,
right. Yeah, but yeah, that soil down there is tough, and obviously to get it going. So you've been using a lot of carbon so fertilizers over the years. Have you
yeah.
noticed? I mean, you're starting to be able to reduce inputs legitimately.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Man, that's got to be a huge, breath of fresh air for somebody. You're literally what are they, a one-legged paper, wallpaper
Yeah.
hanger. I mean, it's kind of,
Yes.
I don't know the stupid phrase, but it just seems so overwhelming. Talk to me about, you started phrase mowing this year. Talk to us about that. I mean, how do you get to do that as a one-man band? Are you hiring it out, or you doing it yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Hired it out. We did it. We did it in late July, early August. So we, learning a lesson this year. I think I went a little too aggressive for the time of year.
Yeah.
Because
When
it
you did
didn't.
July was hot last summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just didn't bounce back like I wanted it to going into the winter. But hopefully, it hasn't been that bad of a winter yet this year. So hopefully we'll bounce back this spring and start the process over.
What field was it?
It was baseball and softball we did this year.
Oh, your two premier fields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
We did.
are they not being used in the fall
They are. They
as
are.
baseball and softball? So they
Yep.
played on a field that had been praised.
Yep. Yeah. So like by the time they started fall ball in mid-September, we were probably about 90% covered
Yeah.
back.
Why phrase mowing? What was the decision?
Just like I said, like these are native fields that were built in the probably baseball was probably built in the 70s, softball was built in the early 90s, and not really using sports turf
Yeah.
construction companies back then. So like they're have a lot of undulations in them. So trying to even those out, get rid of 4 years of growth and thatch,
Yeah.
just to thin it all out and start it all over.
What's it look like now? Can you tell?
It's we didn't overseed this year, so you can still see some of the thin areas and some of the ridges from it because we didn't top dress very heavily.
Yeah.
But it looks pretty good for a dormant Bermuda grass field.
So you are able to top dress though.
We are, yeah. Again, we'll use
In-house, or you doing that yourself, or
no,
are you hiring
we'll
that?
use a contractor
Okay.
for that.
So
Yep.
you're juggling a lot of contractors, it sounds like.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, which has got to be a bit nerve-wracking at times, I'm sure. Getting them there, getting them to do the right job, all those kind of things. Are these people you work closely with that you know well?
Not well. The contractor that we used this year did work for us the first time this year, and they did a really good job because we had some time constraints that we had to get some stuff done in. So yeah, they were able to get it all done.
Do you have to bid that out?
Some things, yes. If we go over a certain threshold, we
Yeah.
do, but a lot of times we try to stay under that threshold
Just
so
so
we
you
can
can
get things
keep
done.
contractors that you know.
Yeah,
So you
and
can
get things done
reward, yeah.
efficiently.
Yeah, well, and you have a relationship. I mean, that's critical.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give a guy coming into a Division I school that sits there all by himself? What can you say to somebody in your position? So you're talking now to the new you coming into
Yeah.
UMBC as the only guy in the facility. What's the advice? I mean, how do you get through something like this? It's just
Just
overwhelming for me.
you gotta love it. You gotta play the game basically.
Yeah.
You gotta know, like, especially if you're working at a state school, there's a lot of things in place that are gonna go against you to um get things done as fast as you want to get them done. So, you're gonna have to plan for that way ahead of time, and communicate a lot and communicate and educate, especially, if you're dealing with coaches and administration that hasn't really seen it done this way before.
Yeah.
If you're asking for $20,000 to raise mow two fields, they want to know like what that 20 grand is going to go towards.
Yeah. Is that what it cost you for those two fields?
Yeah, this year I think
That's
that's
not a
about what
cheap
it was.
process. Yeah. Was that
No,
because of the first time, or I mean, if you did it again, would it be the same?
no, I think it was just like logistics because the company was from out of state and
Mm.
traveling and all that stuff, and it's a when you're taking out 4 years worth of growth, and
Yeah.
like I said, we went a little aggressive this time, so that's a lot of material coming out of there, so it's a
Yeah.
lot of time on their part too
So
being there.
you phrase mode and you did not oversee.
We did not.
You just wanted everything to kind of fill in naturally.
Yep, I wanted to give that Bermuda grass the best chance coming out of the winter, to rebound and not have any competition. So yeah, so we ended up painting it.
Okay, so you had to do some things to keep it going. What was the fertility program after the Phrasmo? What did you do and when?
We hit it with some 545,
Heard
and
about that.
some yeah, and some 822.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the time frame? So you Phrasmo in July. Did you immediately throw the 545 down?
No, I think we went with some ammonium sulfate just to get
Just to
it
pop
ramped
it to
back
really
up.
push it. Yep.
And before we Phrasmo, we hit it with some ammonium sulfate too, just to try to
Get it going.
beef it up going into that. Yeah. And then as we started getting closer to the fall, started going. I think we hit it with the 822, and then once we got into the fall months, the
You did
545.
the dormant feed was the 545.
Yeah.
Are you seeing color now yet, or is it too early? We're now
No,
at
a
the end of
little too
February.
early.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We just had snow here on Saturday morning. So,
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't think it went that far south. We got
Yeah,
snow
we
up
had
here as well, but I thought it was skirted across the northern tiers here, not yours.
Yeah.
But they're playing. But the rugby guys are still out. They'll still play in that. That's
Oh yeah.
crazy. Clint, I got to thank you for you blow me away. I mean, like I said, when we sat down a couple of weeks ago, I remember you telling me that you work by yourself, and I'm like, I don't know that I believed you, to be honest with you. And I don't mean that to sound disrespectful, but it just seems, that's a tough. But it sounds like you're juggling a lot of balls at the same time, and I assume you're dealing with a lot of personalities. I mean, how many coaches do you have to work with?
So men's and women's soccer, baseball, softball, men's and women's lacrosse, when I do have to do work, do work on the turf field. So yeah.
And then you got an AD and an assistant AD. I mean, you got a couple of people above you in management. So and you have to manage up to all of these people, right? Because you got to, I mean, essentially, I'm sure you've got a couple of coaches with strong personalities that, think that you work for them,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so what's the trick in managing a coach? I mean, that's got to be, is there a secret to that? I mean, I talk to a lot of sports turf guys, and there's got to be a secret. You got to have a secret, man. You got 6 of these.
You just got to have thick skin, know that they're coaches. They just want what's best for their program, and like I said, sometimes you have to communicate and educate. Like, hey, I'm only one guy. This is what I can do for you today, or I can't get to you today. I'll get to you tomorrow, or later in the week. It's
what happens if you're sick, for God's sake, or you need to, a day off, or a kid or a wife or whatever? I mean, what happens then?
That's what I said. Thankfully, like our event manager and our assistant AD for facilities, they'll step in and do a lot. So we have a pretty close knit team when it comes to that.
Have you ever wanted to wheel off and take a pop at one of the coaches? Come on.
No comment. No comments.
I think we can end it on that. Clint, I can't appreciate your time enough. I mean, I know you're busy, obviously being a, one-man band over at UMBC, but like I said, your property is near and dear to my heart, and I've always, I always love talking with you, and I can't thank you enough to come and take the time to join us, and hopefully somebody's listening. Me. Absolutely. And hopefully I'd like to get down and see you again sometime soon with all my free time. I'm as probably as crazy as you are in a lot of things.
Anytime.
But I appreciate that. And if you are watching the Earthworks podcast, please subscribe. We want to be able to tell you what we got going, and we'll put some stuff out your way if you give us a subscription and support us a little bit. But Clint, thank you so much. Enjoy. Best of luck this season. Hopefully everything works out perfectly well, and maybe you even get an assistant.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you.